So the government authorised the building of air raid shelters and shelter wardens posts. And these were built on pavements, and half on pavements and half on the roadway. There wasn't much traffic in those days, so it didn't cause any great inconvenience. But they were dark, they were smelly, and as it turned out, they weren't all that safe. When the warning came that an attack was imminent, the headquarters staff were summoned to the Petty Sessions Court in Victoria Street in Belfast, and they all arrived there highly nervous, worried about what was happening, and they all had done the same thing, forgotten to bring their false teeth. And they were not very well spoken at that time. The first air raid was only a comparatively minor thing. A couple of bombs dropped in Shore Road, somewhere about the Grove, and I remember seeing the fronts of two houses being blown off. He was working as Chief Warden.
Chief Warden.
It was a matter of organising supplies, instructions, what to do, and the liaising with the other services, the rescue, the fire, and so on. The night, a few weeks later, the message came through at just after midnight that there was a raid on the way. Apparently it had been picked up by the radio scanners somewhere, probably in Wales, because the planes came up the Irish Sea from Brest, about 200 of them, Ju-88s, which looked as if they had been made of corrugated iron. There was corrugations in the plates and on the wings, but they had three engines, and the two engines on the wings ran at a different speed from the bigger engine on the nose. So when they approached, they didn't sound a steady note, but ooh, like that. And they came in over Carrickfergus and flew along the edge of the escarpment, the hill past Knocka, and they came to Belfast over what is now the zoo, and started dropping their bombs there. And where we lived, in Lismoyne Park, the first bombs landed behind us, and the next set of bombs landed more towards the Cave Hill Road. And I do remember hearing the warden shouting, "There's another of those terrible things above us." And it was a 5-ton aerial mine on a parachute, and it was getting lower and lower, and it drifted over our house and landed in Sunningdale Park, where it blew the fronts off a considerable number of houses. At that time, we and the rest of the family were sheltering in what we had, Father had made into a shelter according to the instructions, with a strengthened ceiling. The windows built up with brickwork, gas-proof, gas-tight screens over the doors, with spare candles in case the electricity went out, which it did, a water supply, and upstairs the bath was filled with water, again to give a temporary firefighting, or in fact for use if the water got cut off, as it was. I don't remember being scared, but thrilled would be the more like it. Didn't know what was coming next, and I hadn't thought of the consequences. It was just exciting to be there at the time that this was happening. That was the first big one. And then a couple of days later, a few days later, there was another air raid when incendiary bombs were dropped. The idea of the first air raid, which was concentrated on the waterworks and the water settlement plant off the Westland Road, the Germans thought that was the water supply for Belfast, and by knocking that out, they thought it wouldn't impede the spread of flame to burn out buildings. So the second big raid was a firebomb raid, and there were firebombs in the gardens either side of us and around here, but the centre of town got the worst of it. The house behind us got a firebomb between its chimney and the sloping roof, and the wardens were managed to deal with that one. The firebombs were about 12, 15 inches long, inch and a half diameter, with a metal tail, and made of stuff called thermite, that on impact it burnt with a bright white light with smoke coming off it. So if it fell on something strong enough to break the detonator, the fire would spread very quickly from one place to another, and indeed in town the fire spread from about City Side to North Street, and also in the docks. The Harlem Wolf was badly affected by fire. The Dublin Fire Brigade sent one or two appliances from Dublin to help, which indeed they did. But after a couple of days, or should it be a couple of nights, they were worn out, and there was water supply difficulties, and they wanted somewhere to stay overnight. And my father, in his car, drove round, being followed by the Dublin Fire Brigade, looking for somewhere to give the firemen some rest. And eventually he found a church hall in Agnes Street, and they stopped there. But as he said, if he hadn't found anywhere there, he was going to bring them home. And how many firemen could you accommodate in this size of a house? Yeah. Well, there was nothing he could do in headquarters during these ones, because all the telephones had all been cut. The electricity had failed. The water supply was giving out. They were worried about gas igniting.